up, everybody? It's AT, and in just 1 minute, we are going to dive into why I believe we just got definitive proof that Dylan Raiola, the #1 quarterback recruit in America, is set to flip from Georgia to Nebraska. We've been talking about it all week. I think we got proof. We're going to dive in. Before we do, though, quick reminder, do me a favor, click the little subscribe button down at the bottom of the screen. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow. We just hit 30,000 subscribers. Cannot thank you all enough for your support. Can we get to 35K before the new year? I think we can. Can't do it without you, so click that little subscribe button. All right, let's dive in. It is the topic of the week in college football. There's no disrespect to the portal stuff. It's big, it's huge, it's monumental, it's important. I wouldn't argue it's bigger than Dylan Raiola right now. If you listen to this channel, if you follow college football, I think most of you know the genesis of what has already happened this week. And momentarily, I want to get to what is going to happen this weekend, which I think is important. But for people, if you've been living under a rock, I think everybody knows, but Dylan Raiola, the #1 quarterback recruit in America, has been committed to Georgia since the springtime. It is worth noting before that he was committed to Ohio State, but there's always been little whispers and murmurs that Nebraska could be in the mix. His father played at Nebraska, legendary, iconic Nebraska Cornhusker. His uncle, Donovan Raiola, is the offensive line coach at Nebraska, the only holdover from the previous coaching staff that Matt Rule decided to keep. What a weird coincidence, I know. And so even though he's never technically been committed to Nebraska, there was always hope that one day maybe he'd become a Cornhusker, but it felt like it wasn't going to happen because he committed to Georgia. He moved to Georgia for his senior year of high school and had, by all accounts, a very good year down in Buford. I bring it up because we're all just going about our lives this past Monday when a bombshell drops. Steve Wiltfong, 24/7 Sports, in my opinion, the best recruiting insider in America, puts out a very simple tweet that just says, I am switching my crystal ball for Dylan Raiola, the #1 quarterback in America, from Georgia to Nebraska. We then get reports that he's visiting this weekend, and the internet goes crazy. And so you knew all that. So let's get to the new stuff, because I think we got 2, maybe 3 real pieces of information that lead me to believe that at this point, I think it is more likely that it happens than that it doesn't happen. Guys, guys and girls been asking me all week, Torres, do you think it will happen? I think at this point, we have to assume it's going to happen more likely than that it won't. The first one, sometimes you just got to follow all the tea leaves in this stuff. And I thought it was very interesting that on Wednesday, we found out that Kyle McCord, the transfer from Ohio State, is no longer considering Nebraska. Now, obviously, listen, if you do the math in your head, Kyle McCord has 1 year of eligibility left. Dylan Raiola probably doesn't want to be in a situation where he has to start day one. And I had been told, from somebody kind of close to the McCord camp, that they were aware even before the recruitment really ramped up with Nebraska that, hey, this is something that could be in the works, but it's not going to impact you. We're not bringing Dylan Raiola in to be a day one starter going forward. My understanding was that everything was okay. At the same time, I find it very interesting what we learned on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we learned that Kyle McCord is no longer considering Nebraska as his recruiting destination. And to me, while I thought it was kumbaya, they could make it work, if you listen to Ohio State fans, they'll actually tell you the exact opposite. And this is why I think it sort of matters with Raiola. It is because why Kyle McCord left Ohio State is because essentially he was going to have to compete again and re-earn the starting quarterback job at Ohio State. Now, I don't totally blame him. He already beat out Devin Brown once. They're clearly recruiting somebody else to come in to play that quarterback position. And I said it when Kyle McCord hit the portal. I don't really blame him. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. At some point, he won the job. He won them 11 games. At some point, if the coaching staff just doesn't believe in you, it's time to move on. But what the Ohio State insiders will tell you is that this is a kid, doesn't really want to compete, doesn't whatever, doesn't this, doesn't that. Is it fair? Is it not fair? Usually, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Not criticizing the kid. I'm just saying what the Ohio State media who covered him on a day-to-day basis has said over the last couple weeks. And so why I bring that up is because as it pertains to Dylan Raiola, I do think that it's important. What happened from the moment that we found out that Kyle McCord planned on visiting Nebraska early in the week, late Sunday into Monday, and Wednesday night? We found out that Dylan Raiola very much might be coming to Nebraska. And so if Kyle McCord really is worried about competing, really is worried about where he is going to spend his last year of eligibility and how he is going to use it, then I'm sorry. But him out of nowhere deciding that Nebraska is no longer a factor when 36 hours, 48 hours before they were, it doesn't feel like a coincidence. It has to feel like this thing is trending where Dylan Raiola is going to end up at Nebraska. But more important than just that, I don't want to just turn this into crushing Kyle McCord because I'm sure he's a great kid, whatever. I just think the timing of the visit tells you everything you need to know. And I think that's the important part here. It's not just that there's crystal ball rumors and innuendo and this and that. And by the way, when Steve Wiltfong puts in a crystal ball, it's not a rumor. He is the most well-sourced guy in high school football recruiting, okay? So that wasn't a knock on him at all. But at the same time, just think about this specific visit, this specific weekend, okay? Let's just think about it. Let's just put on our thinking caps. Let's just be smart about this, okay? Dylan Raiola, why it's important that he's visiting this specific weekend. Do you know that he was supposed to actually move to Athens and move onto campus this coming weekend? Was supposed to move into the dorms, work with the team, get ready for bowl prep. And so the fact that this specific weekend, he has decided that this is the weekend that he is going to visit Nebraska, when he should be moving in or he was planning on moving into Georgia, getting to know his teammates, getting to start working out, getting ready for the bowl prep, which leads into winter workouts, which leads into spring ball. That doesn't feel like a coincidence. Because think about this kid. Think about his background and think about the timing of this. He's been in Nebraska a million times. Even though the coaching staff has changed from Scott Frost to Matt Rule, he knows the building, he knows the facilities, he knows the resources, he knows the campus, he knows the coaching staff, although I'm sure he's not super close with Matt Rule because I don't know how much they really got to know each other. The point I'm trying to make, if this was just a fact-finding mission, if this was just trying to figure out, do I like the campus? Is this where I can envision myself over the next 3 years? You could have done that a month ago. You could have done that in October or November or December. It's not like the uncle just got put on the coaching staff this week. The uncle's been there. He's been there this whole time. You had 14 weekends during the season to visit, I guess 7 home games or whatever to visit. You had 2 weeks since the season ended, and I know the Georgia State playoffs were going on, so maybe that's not realistic. But the point I'm trying to make, elite recruits make visits to campus every single weekend of the fall. By the way, he committed in May. If there was a question in June, July, August, you could have gotten out there. But he already knows everything there is to know. Again, he knows the campus, the facilities, the coaches, the this, the that. So it's not as though, if Dylan Raiola had said, I'm going to, if Steve Wiltfong, let me put it this way, because Dylan Raiola, I don't believe has spoken publicly. If Steve Wiltfong had flipped his crystal ball from Georgia to blurry or Georgia to uncertain, or if he had just said, or if Dylan Raiola had just said, I'm going to go visit USC, or I'm going to go visit Michigan, or I'm going to go visit Penn State or Florida or Florida State, then you sit there and say, well, maybe he's just making sure, crossing the I's, dotting the T's. But this is a campus that he's comfortable with. There's nothing new for him to see. So this isn't just any visit. And the fact that it's happening the week that he's supposed to move into Georgia and the week before signing day, this says to me that this thing is happening. Now, maybe there's some NIL stuff that's got to get figured out. We'll talk about NIL momentarily. But you add all of it up, it makes too much sense. By the way, the latest that I heard, I believe it was Chad Simmons on On3, who does a great job in recruiting as well. Always want to make sure to cite all the guys that do incredible work behind the scenes to get this information. I believe the newest report is the idea that Raiola could actually just stay on campus, basically move into Nebraska instead of moving into Georgia this coming weekend. And it's just crazy. So I don't mean to go on and on, but like I said, I was asked this in a radio interview on Thursday morning, excuse me. And I just said, if you read the tea leaves, this feels like it's happening. Can you imagine? And it could happen that he's playing his high school ball in Georgia, that he visits Nebraska and still signs with Georgia. It just doesn't make sense. Again, there's nothing that he needs to do at Nebraska that he doesn't already know. And it could have been done in previous weeks if he really wanted to get out there that bad. So to me, this is happening. Two quick thoughts to end this thing. From the Nebraska perspective, cannot say how huge this is. And we'll do a reaction video if and when this becomes official. But this is so big. And I know there's already pushback about how good is he really? And, of course, now everybody who isn't going to get him is trying to say that he's the most overrated prospect ever. But even from a perception perspective, even if he isn't that good, by the way, maybe he is that good. And if he is, great. But even if he isn't that good, the perception, the guys that you can now get in the living room for in the 2025 cycle and in the transfer portal, it's game changing, right? Think about it. If you're an elite receiver in the class of 2025, if you're an elite offensive lineman in the class of 2025, if you're an elite defensive player in the class of 2025, the defense has been largely already figured out in year one. Now, year two, you might have a potential 5-star quarterback. And oh, by the way, year three, if he comes, he's definitely going to be the starter you'd think in the fall of 2025. Then it's like, oh my goodness, who wouldn't want to play with that guy? So this would be so big, national brand, national perception. This just makes Nebraska relevant again. And it doesn't mean that they're going to win the national championship. But I've said it for a while. In the new era of college football, where 12 teams make the playoffs, so probably 4 teams from the Big Ten are going to make it every year. I think we're going to have 5 automatic bids, which means 7 at-large bids. I think in any given year, the SEC is going to get 3, the Big Ten is going to get 3, and maybe the Big 12 gets 1, or, whatever, the ACC gets 1. But we're having 3-4 Big Ten teams in this thing every year. I'm not saying Nebraska will be Ohio State or Michigan tomorrow. I'm not even saying they're going to be Oregon. But can they go from this year, 5-7, where they lost a bunch of close games, to 8-4 next year, to maybe when Dylan Raiola is a starter in 2025 to 10-2? I think they can. I really think they can. And so I'm so excited to see what this means for Nebraska, if they can get anybody else to come in with him this class, and then what kind of start they get to the 2024 class as well as the portal. Really quickly, from the Georgia perspective, let me say this. If it does happen, I've seen a lot of Georgia angst on social media, but I don't think it's really Georgia fans. I think it's bluntly, more opposing fan bases that maybe would like to live in a world where Georgia maybe isn't as much of a shooting star as we think they are in terms of a dominant program. I hate to say it, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I don't think it affects Georgia that much, right? Because Carson Beck, it feels like, is coming back next year. He's going to be awesome. He should have maybe even been a Heisman finalist this year. He will be one of the best quarterbacks coming into college football next year. Gunnar Stockton will be his backup. They'll get somebody good in 2025 in the recruiting class. And finally, and most importantly, did you just see him win 2 national championships with a former walk-on at quarterback? So it feels like this is going to happen, but this isn't the end of Georgia. Kirby Smart is going to figure it out. They're going to start in the top 5 next year. They're going to have one of the 2 or 3 most talented rosters in college football. Flips happen, maybe not of this magnitude, of this caliber, but boy, oh boy, does it feel like Dylan Raiola is about to be a Cornhusker. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday of the Aaron Torres Podcast, plus bonus clips right here on YouTube. Subscribe. Again, can we get to 35K before the new year? Not without your support. Click subscribe.